Hello, my name is Marty Winder Adams, and I am so proud and honored to be able to introduce you to Christina Sabine. She is one of the amazing authors in the book, The Other Side of Divorce. And Christina has just this rich background. She has traveled the world. She has been a hotelier for over 30 years. And I know she recently had her own hotel and venue in Africa. And she has just done these amazing things with her life. So I would like to introduce you to Christina. And Christina, thank you so much for being here and telling your story. And just welcome.
Thank you so much, Marty.
And
I'm really honored that you invited me to join in this book.
Well, and the other side of divorce is so interesting because it's not just my story and Christina's story. There's actually 18 other women that joined us to tell their story of getting through divorce and really creating the life they want to lead. And I know Christina has a really interesting approach to understanding some of the dynamics that go on in leaving a relationship. So, Christina, I am going to turn the floor over to you to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and the message you want to share with people through the book.
Thank you, Marty. So, yes, I'm Canadian and very proud to be Canadian. And I have a wonderful son. And I think that was the key to everything. By the time I was ready to divorce, um, I had very little self-esteem left. Um, and but I realized for the sake of my son, we need to go. I need to protect him. So that's why I divorced. So the message I wanted to convey in my chapter is yes, divorce is hard, but it is also difficult on the kids. I have always believed that if a child knew that both parents loved them, it would create a healthier adult with stronger self esteem. And I always felt that as long as the dad, excuse me, isn't an axe murderer or harmful to the kids, he should have a part in his kids' lives. Therefore, I wanted to propose joint custody as an alternative option to raising kids after divorce. In my chapter, Loving My Son More Than Wanting Revenge, in Marty Winter's book, The Other Side of Divorce, I describe how my ex and I made it work, how our son went back and forth, and how I could also attend evening classes and travel when I didn't have my son. When our son was in grade 2, his teacher commented that he was one of the most well adjusted kids in her class. We had divorced when he was 4, so that was like 2, 3 years later. So I am so happy and proud that he became such a good young man, and despite our divorce. And then to the other part of my chapter, I wrote about leaving an abusive relationship, which was scary. Since my ex's anger was about a power struggle between two adults, I knew that he would never harm our son, which he never did. When I left our marriage, I had zero self esteem left because my ex had put me down too many times, but I left to protect our son. I also believe that we are the adults, and as a mother, it was my job to protect my child, regardless of how much we once loved I once loved this man. But we must be careful leaving. At this point, many men become cavemen, stating, if I cannot have you, no one can. This is when you need help from family, friends, a women's shelter, or, if necessary, the police, to leave safely. My main message to women leaving an abusive relationship, besides saving your children, is you need to make a choice. Do I want to remain controlled and live a very small life? Or do I want to be free to pursue my dreams? My ex-husband told me after we were divorced that I could never be a catering and wedding planner. Yet, besides doing exactly that for 4 years, I managed 5 hotels internationally and built and managed my own small hotel in Africa. He lied. He was wrong. And thank God I left him and had a very big life instead. After that, I was even in a very loving and respectful relationship. Of course, after many years of therapy. What I want to share with readers of this book is that you have better options and choices for you and your kids, especially in 2025. Hopefully, I have provided a tiny roadmap and some inspiration to choose a better path. So that's what I wrote about in my chapter in this book. I also wanted to say I am a hotel consultant, and I have, as I said, managed 5 hotels internationally beside my own. And so I'm quite knowledgeable in the industry. I've even been a tour guide, taking 40 Germans and English speaking people across all of North America in bilingual tours. So I am quite knowledgeable in the hotel and tourism industry. And if anybody needs some consulting, a secret hotel person to evaluate their hotel, I am happily available. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Christina, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it is just amazing what you have done. So I want to ask you, how did you first decide to take that step to become a wedding and event planner after you had been told for years and years and years that you weren't going to be able to do this and this wasn't going to be some? How did you actually go about doing that?
Well, it started, I was working at the front desk of a very posh hotel in downtown Toronto, and we would always look downstairs where the cool jobs were. There used to be a job as hotel PR person. There was hotel sales and hotel catering. And I just thought, wow, setting up meetings for people and setting up functions, lunches, dinners, especially galas. But the pièce de résistance would be a wedding, would be so exciting, and to be part of a wedding. And so, yeah, it was a long journey. Actually, it's a funny story. I was working for a PR company doing kind of boring work, and my boss came to me and said, "Hey, Christina, used to work in hotels. Can you throw me a little party for 1,000 people for Bear Aspirin?" And I was like, "Sure." And so, and it had to be a theme party. I had to write 5 different themes, and the bear had to decide which theme they wanted, and it was a tropical evening in paradise. So we even had orchids flown in from Hawaii. This was a time when people had a lot of money. I had to have the whole theme run through it, even a Hawaiian menu. I hired Hawaiian dancers. They were second generation Hawaiian dancers, and games and everything. So one of the attendees was the husband of a Bear employee, and he happened to be the assistant director of catering for the Westin Prince Hotel. And when my resume came across his desk, he said, "Oh, this lady can throw a party." So that's how I got my job into catering.
Yeah.
So
So I want to say this because when you said this kind of funny story, so much when you say, like, I know this sounds kind of trite. I know people say this all the time, but when you take that step out of your comfort zone, when you take on something, when you said a small party for 1,000 people, I could feel my anxiety level. I couldn't do something like that. So when you take that step out of your comfort zone and trust yourself, right? You're able to, and then look at the amazing doors that opened up. What about like, I know you've been around the world. What are some of the other maybe life lessons you learned maybe when traveling internationally? And I know that you have a hotel right now in Africa that you built yourself. It is beautiful. I mean, I wish I had been there, but I've seen the pictures online and it is absolutely gorgeous and rave reviews. How did you experience life in different countries? Like, what was that like for you?
Um, this brings me to a very valuable lesson. I was 18. I had just arrived in Austria to study hotel management, and I was staying in a little pension. And my neighbor, also fellow student, knocked on the door, and she said something, and I had to speak in German already, and my brain was like, "Oh, okay." And um, I said, "But in Canada, we do things like this." And she said, "You're not in Canada anymore." And I was like, "Wow." And then, of course, as a bit of a rebel, I pushed against that idea. And then I realized, no, I can really learn something here, that if I have to solve a problem, I can think about how would I solve it in Austria, or how would I solve it in Mexico, where I've also lived, or how would I solve it in Africa. So I realized there's different approaches. Yeah, different ways of solving problems, and to just adjust and adapt to other cultures and other ways of doing things. And yeah, it's a great life lesson.
And although I have certainly not traveled as extensively as you have, um, I do find that if you go into, whether you're just on vacation or whether you're moving someplace, if you go in there and try to say, I'm going to make this exactly like where I grew up or where I came from, you are blocking yourself from learning so much. If you just stay open and accept that maybe the way that your culture or your country or your region does things is not the only way to do things, you can really expand and broaden your horizon. Even if you think, well, I'm never going to do that, that's fine. You can still, it's still another thought or idea that you have in your head how to approach other things.
Yeah, it was a very valuable lesson, and it really helped me because managing hotels, I mean, you're running businesses and you have to adapt. Like in Namibia, they take 1 month for Christmas holidays. So that means that I can't get any help. I have to, after Christmas, give my staff leave for 1 month. There's a lot of things I have to um, adapt to that culture if I want to be successful in my business in that country. So yeah, it was important to learn to adapt and also fun, like learn other cultures. And that's kind of when I was a kid. Um, and Mrs. Farrow, my grade 4 social studies teacher, pulled down the map of Africa. And I was just like, wow, I grew up in a little tiny town in Canada. And I was like, I want to see the world. I want to be an explorer like Vasco da Gama and Sir Francis Drake. And so, and not just go as a tourist, but to learn about other cultures and mix with other people. Like right now, I'm relearning my Spanish so that I can communicate and become friends with other Spanish speaking people.
Yeah, and again, this all stems from uh recognizing if you're stuck someplace, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a location, whether it's a job, you may not be able to get out immediately because we have to be realistic. We have to have money, we have to have the ability to do things. But just making the decision that you're not going to stay stuck in some place that's not serving you, that's not healthy, that's not productive, and then planning how to move. And I think the thing that I think you must have to be able to do what you do, to travel and to work in hotels where you're dealing with, let's face it, not everybody is super nice when they come in as a guest. I travel a lot and I've seen people throw fits in hotel lobbies over nothing. And it's got to be, you really have to trust in yourself to do those things.
Yeah. I'm very proud. How I learned hospitality in Austria was that it was a matter of pride and tradition. Like the waiter could have been the grandfather was the waiter, his son was the waiter, his grandson was the waiter in this hotel. And so I wanted so much to create that kind of level of service, also to remember my guests' names. So when guests at our little hotel arrived, I would have a little gold tray with fresh juice, and I would say, "Welcome. You must be tired." Because people drove sometimes 6 hours through the deserts and maybe had two flat tires. So they could have been exhausted. So I also had chairs for them to sit down and give them some fresh juice. And then I would say, "Oh, do you have dinner reservations already?" "No." "Okay, let me call and make you dinner reservations. What would you like to eat?" And then activities. We would book the activities. And also 3 nights a week, we had a beautiful Moroccan lounge where I would serve cocktails and get to know the guests. And also all the guests would come together and exchange ideas. And what I loved the most, I didn't necessarily even have to be in the room. I was just bartending, and a German guest would be sharing with a Belgian guest a sandstorm that they drove through, or some animals that they saw in Etosha Park, in the game park. So I love that. And sometimes, even occasionally, guests would become friends at my place. We even had a wedding proposal on the beach.
Oh, nice. And
And obviously, we had 12 weddings because it was a beach hotel. So we also did that. So,
yeah. And that is fascinating because the first time I ever experienced something like that was, oh gosh, you know, so when I was younger, I stayed in like the cheapest hotel motel I could find when I was traveling because that was what I had to afford. Now I'm a little more selective. I try to pick like unique hotels, maybe some of the historic hotels and those kind of things to stay in. And I still shop around for bargains. I'm certainly not buying the top of the line, but the first time I ever experienced that kind of an environment was I stayed at a hotel in Boston, and it was a very old hotel. And they had every night they had like a meet and mingle down in the lobby, and they had like some wine and they had some hors d'oeuvres. And they invited you to come down, and it was amazing. It was the same experience. Now, I think that they had maybe 30 or 40 rooms. It wasn't a huge hotel, but they seemed to know everybody's name. The staff went out of their way to ask you, did you need anything? Were you having a good day? It was such an amazing experience. So I can just imagine what your guests were getting.
Mm-hmm. And that creates repeat business. Many of those guests came over and over. One of my favorite guests was a retired KLM pilot, and obviously he's slept around. Sorry. And he and his wife were, very well-traveled people, but they loved my place, and they came 5 times. And yeah, or people would send their friends,
Right,
or
right.
yeah, or
So
family.
I want to ask you before we're just about out of time, but Christine, I wanted to ask you, you said you are now a hotel consultant. Can you just, because I think a lot of people probably don't know what that is. So can you just share a little bit about what you do and what services you offer for hotel managers or owners or, whoever might want to hire you for that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I certainly can come in and be a secret guest and do an evaluation of a hotel. Since I was 18, I've worked in hotels, from maid to in the kitchen, as a waitress, bartending, and then front desk supervisor, catering manager, sales manager, general manager. So I have worked in all areas. And so whenever I walk into any hotel, and I stay frequently at hotels, I'm immediately in my head, yeah, they need more lighting here. The beds are not good. The staff is not friendly. So in addition to being able to do that, to go in and do evaluations of hotels, I have done a lot of training in my years, particularly in third world countries, which is much more difficult. And how I do that is I try and instill pride in their country, in their area, and in their hotel, and that way. And then also often the staff is afraid to speak English because it's not their first language, and so I give them a few phrases. And I tell them, don't worry, the guest is so happy that you're talking to them. And when I really, I'm so happy when I'm seeing my staff saying some of the same phrases that I taught them to say. But when they're interacting with the guests, and the guest starts asking them, well, how do you live? What's it like at your house? Or what, yeah, do you have children? And then the staff is like, wow,
Yeah.
the guest is curious about me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have done all kinds of training, wait staff training particularly, or in the kitchen, I've had to go in and teach chefs new menus, because they only had a repertoire of 4 meals, and
Right.
sometimes guests would stay a week. So, and I've also taught hotel management at a college level in Panama, but I taught it in English. And that was really fun because those students were about in their 20s, and they were really eager to learn.
Yeah.
And they were happy that I was giving them practical knowledge, not just book
Yeah.
knowledge.
So you
And they,
offer you really offer a wealth of experience and expertise that you can come in and do this. And it was funny when you were saying that, because I was recently on a cruise, and I won't name any names because I'm not endorsing any particular cruise line. But if you want to know what it was and you want a referral, contact me because I'd be happy to give you one. um, and the gentleman who was caring for my room, who was maintaining my room, he knew me by name, And he would see me in the hallways or whatever you call them in a ship, like not even on my same deck. And he would say, "Hi, Marty." And he would remember me. It just amazed me because we often think of, that kind of personal service on like a little boutique hotel. But this was a huge ship with like 4,000 passengers. And he still knew my name. And I don't know if he knew everybody's name or if it's just because, my name's a little odd or something. But yeah, he was so kind, and he always asked, do I need anything? Here, he gave me like a card that I could call him if I needed extra linens, or I never did, but it was so nice to know that. And he also did these cool little folded towel animals on in my room every day. But Christina, thank you so much for being an author in the book. Thank you for sharing this information. And I will make sure if anybody wants to reach out and contact Christina, her contact information is in the notes below this YouTube video. Please reach out to her and make sure you read her chapter. Christina, in the other side of divorce. Christina, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Marty.